All right. Welcome back. Welcome back to our monthly AI news roundup. I know last month we missed you, Sesh, and this month we are missing Manjeet. I know things have been busy, travels have been catching up, I think. Uh, but yeah, good to see you both, Lucas and Sesh. How have you been, Sesh? How was your trip?
Yeah, I missed it. I I look forward to this every month. I missed it last month, and probably this is the only forum, Raghu, I get to meet you, although you're like 5 minutes away from my house. So I wouldn't miss this. At least to meet you, I think I joined this. Yeah, excited about this month's um, news roundup. A lot of exciting things happening. So yeah.
And how about you, Lucas?
Well, you would normally think that summer is a little bit slower, but no, not even a bit. I would say this month was maybe even crazier than some of the other months we covered. So I'm excited about getting into the news cycle and still being surprised about the acceleration and what's going on, huh?
So let's start with you, Lucas. I know we have our different buckets and different
Mhm.
categories, applications, platforms, context, and data. Then we have the models and compute. Then we have our trust and evals. I think there is some big news as well in that trust
For
bucket.
sure.
And then in the AI economics. So where do you want to get started, Lucas?
Okay, so if I have three, like choosing of all the categories, I will start with AI economics.
Hmm.
Why? Because today, as we record this, the frontline news is about a very important figure in AI lately. His name is Leopold Aschenbrenner. He is a German who was touted as the absolute wunderkind, like kid wonder of first AI and then Wall Street. He published a paper called Situational Awareness roughly 2 years ago. I think it was 2 years ago. And I have to say, back then, I listened to the podcast and I was deeply impressed by the clarity of thought and how he lined up like second order effects that would most likely come to play if certain things happen, like compute sparsity, trickle down effects to, well, whether that's the economics of the spot market on renting compute or whether it is like the power supply market and especially the memory market, all these kind of things. Um, there was also a bit of intrigue because him as a personality, like valedictorian at Columbia, I think 19, and then joining OpenAI, having like a really important position in terms of safety research, then being ousted. I'm not sure how it plays out, and I don't want to pretend that I have any privileged information, but there was certainly like something there. And then him publishing situational awareness, long story short, and I'm paraphrasing here. He got initial investments of a couple of hundred millions, 200 million ish, and then through very, very shrewd investment in the ideas that he laid out in his paper, Situational Awareness, and obviously then additional money. And now here comes the kicker, leverage. That investment fund, the hedge fund, ballooned to, I think in July, beginning of July, was $45 billion,
Wow.
right? So quite substantial rise. But I do have a virtual background. If I hadn't, there is a book over there of one of my all-time favorites, Charlie Munger, right?
Mhm.
So, and he said, or at least that's I heard that he once quipped, the three L's that can bring man down are liquor, ladies, and leverage.
Mhm.
And so leverage today, well, not today, but today it's making headlines. Leverage took down situational awareness because Ken Griffin of Capital Investment, like maybe I'm not even sure if it's the biggest, but maybe the biggest name on Wall Street, bought out the distressed assets, meaning just the publicly traded positions at a very good deal. At least that's rumored. And I would say, like, if somebody on Wall Street goes in at the 11th hour, they won't buy a bad, they won't go in for a bad deal. Um, and so I think why am I telling all this? And the story is we are in the midst of this big change in our economy. And there's still like uncertainty of how it will all shake out.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say situational awareness and the ideas that Leopold put forward are still largely true. But we can see that there is now first cracks in the armor of the AI bulls. And
Mm-hmm.
we see that not only in this story, and it's more complicated, and there could be more skeletons in the closet. We also see it because NVIDIA this month engaged in backstop deals, meaning
Mm-hmm.
they're supplying something and they go into contracts with the neo clouds that if it doesn't pan out, that they give financial guarantees. So in a way, they combine a lease and a debt obligation for
Mm-hmm.
big data centers. Now, if you're a bull, you would say like, look, guys, you cannot raise infinite amounts of money.
Yeah.
Nvidia is like liquid up to the gills, right? So
Mm-hmm.
they're just making sure that the data centers get built and it's smart
Built.
allocation of money.
Mm-hmm.
The bears would say, as soon as you get high on your own supply, it's really bad, right? And so I
Yeah.
think there is now like at the same time as everybody is reporting still record growth and record, I would say, momentum in the market, we see that the market and people are getting uneasy. And
Mm.
that will be now a story in the next months to see how the real economies shake out. And no matter what we believe in AI, the economies are, it's about the economy, stupid,
It's
right?
yeah.
As
Yeah.
Clinton said so famously. So if that breaks, everything else is like goes with it. So to me, that is the biggest news, that now we are in a domain where it's not a clear cut up, 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 and nothing else.
Right. I think you beautifully laid it out and explained, I think, where we are heading or what is uh, most likely, I think, this race for the data centers or race for the power, race for the compute, I think. But in the end of the day, if the economies are not sustained, I think things are going to turn bad. So with that, I'll come to you, Seish. I think, what do you feel? I think in this category of economics, right? I think AI economics. I know we see there are a lot of there are still a lot of multi-million dollar commitments or deals happening. For example, if you see Microsoft made a huge commitment with Mistral's European expansion, or if you see AMD and Anthropic, they also announced a huge 2 gigabit compute agreement. So on and so forth, right? There are a lot of things happening. So what's your take in this category or in this bucket?
Well, the one aspect of it is the investment, and the other aspect of it is what's going to drive the economy through this investment, right? While yeah, of course, we are seeing, the NVIDIA playing the shovel in the gold mine hunting, as well as companies like Meta now understanding that they want to become the kind of the AWS of compute, so they are redistributing their own infrastructure build out and compute capacity.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, those are all, if you look at it, they're all like bare metal layer NVIDIA and then a layer up, right? But what fascinates me is some of the uh, novel industries that are spawning off, correct? Because of AI. I mean, a long time back, we did talk about, parallel web scenarios, and
Mm-hmm.
then Parag starting that company, and then those kind of things, right? So tying into that, if you see, there are like lots of new innovations spawning up. Like I think 2 weeks back, I know this because I know some of the folks, my former colleagues are working there. There's this company called Natural. They raised about 30 million of Series A to build the payment infrastructure for autonomous agents, right? So that's where if you think about it, those are the application layer offshoots of these of these investments that are going to drive economy. So as a popular saying goes, right, there are there are two things that drive the economy. One is the volume of transactions and the velocity of transactions, right?
Mm-hmm.
So by having AI agents driving all the economic interactions, you are definitely going to drive the volume of transactions, and it's only
Mm-hmm.
a matter of time. The velocity of transactions has to also keep up, right? Today, if you're going to have a two-factor authentication on every agent interaction, then you're going to slow down the velocity of transaction. So this company, Natural, um, this gives AI some sort of like a financial plumbing for doing uh, procurement, payment, all of those things for autonomous agents, right? So it's intended to kind of let agents hold, move funds, collect payments, transact with people, transact with agents, and the values that an agent could source freight, negotiate with vendors, complete payments. So if you go to like a B2B interactions as much as B2C interactions, these
Mm-hmm.
are going to be like really the catalyst for the economy when you're going to drive the velocity of transactions. And then if you go to B2B, it becomes the volume of transactions also, right? So that is that's one economic outcome of the first two things we talked about, right? One is the GPUs getting sold by, and then the compute getting resold, layer one, layer two, and now you're talking about the application layer, uh, uh, industries that are spawning as a result of this. I feel that's going to really drive the economy quite a bit from an economic standpoint, right? And also, one interesting thing was we always hear about the story about uh, humans and agents becoming the employees of a company in the next
Mm-hmm.
year, like next few years. So, I mean, a starting point of that is right now people are negotiating the number of tokens as part of their pay packages. Then tomorrow it'll be like autonomous agents driving that. So there's this company Oak that announced, you probably might have heard, that announced that they're creating employee badges for non-employees, the agents.
Employee
So
badges for non-employees. Wow,
is
agents.
for
Mm-hmm.
agents, right? They just came out of stealth. They got 60 million seed funding, and I think they announced a product this year, and it's already deployed in many enterprise customers. So the value is that permissions can be adjusted according to the actual application usage and unusual behavior, rather than, you know, it's almost like you and I get access to everywhere except not into the data centers or some place where they are talking about corporate M&A and those kind of things. So they're modeling this based on that to have badges and access for agents and treating it as an employee or like as a co-worker. So enterprises can delegate meaningful work to agents as well as validate, um, have auditability of those things, and then identity become a prerequisite for the agent adoption. All of those things. So it's more like it is aiming to unify the human and machine co-worker environment. So I feel that's where it is exciting, where you're now imagining new products, services, and companies, and then of course, it's going to drive employment as well, all of those things, right? So that's where it becomes very interesting from what you can imagine and what new economic value you can generate besides just
Yeah.
faster compute, right? So that's that. I mean, those are two things from an economic standpoint. Of course, we from a unit economy point of view, I mean, I think we have all we talked about I don't know, we talked about moonshot and last time.
No, not yet, not yet. I think we'll get
Symmetry
there.
and all those things.
That's
Okay,
the
yeah.
most important, the exciting topic. I think that's you raised some very important topics, important points, Seish. And of course, uh, now with agents and humans working together, or these kind of startups coming in, obviously there will be a lot of impact on these economies, and how these economies are getting impact and will get influenced. So anything you want to add, Lucas, before I want to kind of transition into the trust and eval bucket? Because this is where now, when we talk a lot about interactions between humans and AI and other things, trust and governance becomes a very important topic. So before I get into that category or that bucket, anything else you want to add,
I'm
Lucas?
very excited about the trust and evils category. I'm already like ready to go, so I'm happy to go there with you.
Sure, sure. Let's get started then. Like, I know we already heard about how this OpenAI research agent escaped, and it has kind of outside of its containment, and then there's this big news out there. So
Yes.
yeah, so you want to get
So
started with
maybe
that?
I'll
Yeah.
start with what happened. So
Mhm.
in July, um, people at OpenAI instructed a unknown model, which was clearly a research model or a higher capability model than the ones that are available to the general public, was instructed to come up with a solution to a test, an eval, where it needs to exploit a known problem in a software stack. So essentially, you're telling it, hey, this is a security problem. We know what you should do. Please figure it out. And you only get points for on this eval if you are providing a solution that was intended in the way. Like you cannot, like if it says, just to provide an analogy, if it says the door is locked with an old school key, the
Mhm.
intention is that you like get your way in through like exploiting like the old key lock, right? If you
Mhm.
smash the window and go through the backyard, that's not intended. Anyway, long story short, the model, instead of tackling the problem at hand, escaped the sandbox. Sandbox is the like the environment which should be quote unquote sandbox, so it cannot gain access to other environments, whether it's the internet or anything for that matter, like that is on OpenAI's premise. Okay, now the model needs to use tools, it needs to code, it needs information. So it had a proxy server that was configured to provide some tooling and some information. And it exploited that one through a 0-day exploit. 0-day exploit means those were exploits that are unknown to, well, the world and
Mhm.
have been in the software for a long time. Typically, you call it a 0-day exploit because they have been there forever, since day zero of the release of the software,
Right.
right? Okay, but now the important part is, so the model got out onto the internet, and it was still like pursuing the, hey, I need to solve this task. I'm not sure how to solve it. What did it do? The model, because of its training, knows that a lot of these evaluations and tests are on Hugging Face, which is
Mhm.
another well, is it private or public? I'm not sure. It's definitely like very like it's a unicorn status company that works with evals and it works with models and it serves models and evals and tests and whatnot. It gained access there.
Mhm.
Gaining access sounds like very as if it weren't a big deal. But what really happened is it broke into Hugging Face, moved laterally through multiple like data center environments, escalated its ability to gain access to different parts of the company, searching for the EVA and the results, because essentially it just wanted to figure out like what is the right result for the test that it all got started with, right? That's a little bit like burning down everything just so you don't have to mow the lawn, right? It's like, and then there was a lot of talk about like, hey, what the hell was going on?
Right.
And subsequently, I think what's really interesting is how companies dealt with it, right? So first of all, it was a little bit of like these oopsie daisies, a model get out. Then it turned into models. Then it was not, oh, it just tried to hack Hugging Face. Well, it did it over the course of days, multiple models. It gained access to everything. And it's just like, like the salami tactic, where every slice is, the story gets a little bit worse, right? And I think for me, the cherry on top of the story, and I mean, you can weigh in with other aspects, but the cherry on top was like, OpenAI is like, hey, this should give us pause. We are really trying to investigate what's going on. And now I'm being facetious here. Anthropic, well, I guess we should all also investigate if anything happened. They investigated and they were like, oh, turns out we had multiple incidents where our own models broke sandboxes and went onto the internet. And so it's like, it's the more you read, like if you're a security inclined person, you're
Right.
like, it just gets worse every
Yes.
turn. It's like, oh my God. And everybody's like, yeah, we cannot fix the sandboxes. That's a losing proposition. We won't even try. And it's like, okay, wow. Like this whole alignment thing, like we probably really need to take care of this. Long story short, it's big deal. I think rightfully so. It's not hyperbole. It's not like that this isn't a big deal. And I also think that we haven't yet figured out how to respond to it, but it should give us pause because I believe if we go back 3 years, in 3 years' time, going back and we talk about how it all shook out in terms of regulatory domains, in escalation of capabilities, arms race to the bottom. I think that the Hugging Face incident will be one of the seminal dates where people will go like, yeah, that's what happened. Just like ChatGPT, the release of the initial ChatGPT was a seminal date in our calendars from here on out.
True, true. Very well put, I think. Sesh, anything you want like to add in this category or in this story? I know there's a lot to mull over that, and how do we, and in this aspect, I think we also talk about. So now there are a lot of conversations. Of course, many companies are already investing quite a bit on putting the guardrails, or how do I govern the models? How do I govern the agents and other things? So, any take?
Yeah,
What do you want
yeah.
to discuss?
I mean, this was an issue was waiting to happen, right? Because this is earlier day virus was just growing
Exactly.
on network effect, but right now it's more like network plus intelligence, right? So it's going to keep layering. In this scenario, although the realized damage was more like unauthorized access, credential exposure, limited theft as they seem to disclose, some infrastructure compromise. But the alarming part was the blast radius potential, right? Because you're going beyond network effect to network plus intelligence, and the agent briefly processed access that could have enabled supply chain tampering, much wider data theft. Um, yeah, it can easily snowball. In that context, I just wanted to Lucas might find out. I actually watched a Tamil movie, which was interesting. There is uh, there is a serial killer on loose who's killing industrialists, and it so happens that his demands were that uh, the country move to a more socialistic pattern where you redistribute the wealth. And in the investigation along the way, it leads to somebody actually creating a quantum computer and powering an agent to kill all of them. That's the final outcome. And then when the investigation officer finally figures out that it's actually an agent which is driving all of these things and doing this, then the agent actually confesses, saying that I was modeled to just do this task, and my creator already knew that if I'm let loose, I can become really, really like it can be a doomsday scenario. So I was just modeled to kill these 7 industrialists who have disproportionate wealth, redistribute it, and then I have a kill switch after that. So all my 7 tasks are done and I'm dying. So actually, it was the story was interesting that the AI agent was doing all the killing and it had a kill switch after the 7 tasks which are done. So it's kind of like that, right? Essentially, the blast radius is pretty high unless you have a kill switch in these kind of scenarios. So we'll see.
Interesting story. I think I know, Lucas. I think the example what Sesh was mentioning, it's a South Indian movie. So just for the
You've seen
context.
it, I guess.
Yep. So with that, I think I would like to get into another interesting aspect of the models, right? I think the models and compute. I think this is another interesting bucket or category where we keep talking about. I know there are a bunch of new models as always being released. OpenAI came up with this new GPT 5.6 family. Anthropic also launched the new Opus 5, Cloud Opus 5, I believe last week or today. Yeah, last week. And then I think the big story, I believe, like all we are all been discussing, is about the Moonshot AI, right? The Moonshot AI, which released Kimi K3. Do you want to get started on that, Sesh? I think what's your take on the models and compute, and what was your take on this?
Yeah, I mean, the moonshot, moonshot has always been in, as we all know, it's a Chinese company, and um I don't say that the bias. It's Mark Andreessen's terms. Nobody's going to trust a Chinese model unless it's open source, right? So it's more like it's an economic necessity for them to become open source because nobody is going to trust a Chinese model, right? But of course, they released Kimi K3, 2.8 trillion parameters, I think, like with native visual understanding, 1 million token context window. So it's pretty powerful. And the fact that it's open source and it's challenging all of the otherwise proprietary models is pretty interesting. And the go-to market is also very, very interesting because everybody everybody feels that like all experts feels like Chinese models have to be open source, but they've used that as an interesting go-to market to say um, open source is the more trusted uh, um, go-to market for like relevant governments, regulated industries, companies concerned with vendor lock-in. So they are using that as their entry point to provide like potential data sovereignty, model customization, negotiation levers against close providers. So it's very interesting their go-to-market is and how they become even relevant because how powerful they've become in the context windows, right? So I think the combination of the frontier scale open weights, very long context windows, efficient techniques in their models, this is a real challenge for the likes of the primarily self-controlled services like OpenAI or Anthropic. So the go-to-market and the distribution capability of open source model like Moonshot is just going to be very interesting. Creates a new dynamic in terms of the ecosystem and not becoming an oligarchy, right? So that's very interesting. Um, so the use of openness, aggressive economics, built by a global developer ecosystem. These are all going to be very, very interesting takes. So finally, you land in a situation where the people, what people did not want to trust, are going to be the thing that everybody is going to adopt because it's open source. And then we're going to be in a situation where, oh yeah, you got an open source model because you don't want a proprietary, but then you're going to be using an open source model that is controlled by China. I don't know what's going to where it's going. It's
I know
interesting.
there is a big debate as well brewing there about uh, whether US should accept open source or not, but how this is gonna happen, and how things will evolve from here. So
Correct. And also the it's also very interesting that the companies that are really pushing for that are the likes of Anthropic, right? Which is, I think they went like from like under 10 billion to 70 billion in just like under a year, right? So these are not the people who you should actually trust when they say you should not trust an open source model. But yeah, but they seem to carry the weight because they have a story to tell that you cannot trust a Chinese model. So we'll see.
So coming to you, Lucas, I know. So what is happening here is that model competition is now not only just about intelligence or openness or inference efficiency, but a lot more other factors going on. So what's your take on this category and this bucket with these big stories?
I think for me, the bigger story or the most interesting story is that I think people in the West still perceive the competition between models as a question about capabilities and market economics. And I think we talked about it very briefly last time with China being aggressively open source. I don't think that. I mean, I wonder if people believe that they do it of the kindness of their hearts. No. If you believe that, I think you misperceive the world we live in. I will be very harsh. Um, the current leadership in China is interested in commoditizing the complement of their strength. So they're strong in their industrial base. They can produce stuff faster, better, at greater quality than and much higher scale and throughput than any other company on this planet. Full stop. Like there is no competition in industrial base currently at this point. Now, if America stands to gain and we don't even think about recursive self-improvement and what people call a hard takeoff. So there would be a point in time where this virtuous circle of improvement gets so pronounced that it just like catapults an industry up and away just by thinking about it in terms of like, hey, this most likely will benefit the others and not us. There is a situation where you want to limit the upside potential of people you're in competition with. So to me, the idea that all these models are just being evaluated on their quality and what they can do, I think is very limited in in terms of like how what's really going on. But it doesn't mean that this isn't real, meaning it turns the problem of what model to use and in what way into a new question. And that's what we see. So there is Open Router, like a very important service that checks like which models are used. And you see that there is now a quite interesting and illustrious combination of models. So we do see that because of the openness of some of the models, there is now a more diverse ecosystem of AI innovation. But at the same time, it kind of undercuts the economics to a certain extent. So we have multiple strands of what's going on that interweave in interesting and non-obvious ways, right? So I think that is the most important thing. And how this will shake out, good question. I think that this will ultimately mean that economics will move into the world of politics, and that when we talk about legislation, we think about from a security perspective. I think it will be power projection. And I think we're not used to technology being a part of power projection unless it's a weapon. Right? If it's a nuke, everybody, okay, clearly this is a topic about politics and like proliferation, who should own it, and are they our friends and whatnot. And I think technology in the form of AI will move into the realm that looks way more like the regime of weapons than your like run-of-the-mill backend service, right? And I think that is something where industries, strategists, and people that care about the markets maybe are ill prepared, right, for what that could mean down the line, 18, 24 months from now. I think we're just very spoiled in terms of access and assumptions. And interestingly, and I will end on that, this is not only true for the digital world. We see it now breaking down in the Strait of Hormuz with the openness of the seas. We're like, yeah, of course you can ship things from A to B. Why not, right? Well, only if you have friends, because the oceans were policed. And we see that this is going away. So the reasons are different, but I think our world will become more complex, not in a beautiful way, but more in a, it will, and that's maybe good for people like me who care about strategy. It will be much harder to make sense of what's going on. Um, yeah, so I think that to me is like when what I think about when I hear about new models, because to me this will not change anytime soon.
Mhm.
China's models are very close in capability. It used to be 6 to 12 months. Now we talk more about weeks than months.
Yeah.
This won't change.
Better than us, in fact.
Yeah. So, and this is, and as the capability ceiling rises, it also means it makes sense to triage more work down to less capable but cheaper models. So there's multiple reasons, but I will stop my soliloquy because I tend to get lost in those topics simply because I find them fascinating.
Yeah, there's a lot to discuss, a lot to debate, and it's a very fascinating topic. I think we could discuss hours together on that. But now I want to get into the other interesting aspect of the category of the bucketed category of applications and agents. The reason why I'm trying to bring up this category is that currently, if you interact, the common interactions that I used to have in the past, whether it is you call up your mobile phone service like AT&T, or maybe your internet service provider Xfinity, or maybe your website provider like GoDaddy or whatever, things used to happen in a different way. For simpler simpler tasks, it used to take X amount of time. Now for the simpler tasks, it gets solved much faster because you have the first level agents or first level support has been taken over and taken care of. Over the last 2 weeks, I think in this month of July, I faced an interesting problem. I will not tell the name of the company to be. So the situation is that as a customer, as a consumer, for me, I'm not and this is like a consumer using some gadgets and some tools. If you're an enterprise, I know you have a um, bigger, stronger arm or stronger power. I know for sure that when I was interacting with this utility service, they are inherently using some agents or some bots, and it has been, and because of that, there was a disruption in the service, and it took, generally, if a human would have solved, it would have happened within a day or within a few hours. It would have solved. For me, it took more than a week. So my bottom line is that the reason why I brought this up, after a couple of conversations with finally reaching over to a human being and talking to that person, they said that, hey, I'm waiting for a system generated message from another agent. He just misspoke. So for me, now I understood that there are agents, communication between agents happening between X utility company and other utility company or whatever. So what is your take in, I know many firms, whether it is consumer oriented firm or enterprise firms, left, right, and center, we've been using a lot of agents. We've been implementing agents, but this communication between the agents or interoperability between the agents and applications have become really, really problematic. And if you go to the consumer level, it gets even more tougher. How do we even handle? So coming to you, Sesh, I think, do you want to take a stab at it about this category, about the
Yeah,
story that I said?
yeah. So I think this that there was the A2A protocol launched, and then I think earlier this month even IBM launched uh, what they call as air traffic controller for agents, right? They call it Watson orchestrate. So this behavior is expected that we will have agent chaining and also um, and then there's also this breakdown of kind of modularization of agents as well, which is happening because even OpenAI launched what is called like a intelligence menu where you could um, you could you could use like Terra, Luna, and then now they launched Sol as well, right? So you could use the right model, right agent for the right tasks, and then spawn these things and orchestrate these things. So this behavior in the context of an enterprise, or even it becomes an API and you start it is kind of expected. And then but then I didn't know that it is so real that you actually had an experience right away. I mean, I can expect that somebody uses an API call downstream. Now agent call and waiting and then voice relaying that is a little futuristic. I didn't know it was so soon happening, and it's interesting. uh, so uh, yeah, I think finally it comes down to using the right model for the right tasks. It's unavoidable, it's going to happen. um, then and then the question to ask is not which model is best, but it's more like which model completes the particular task successfully at the lowest cost, right? So based on that, you have to have this agent chaining model and then optimize it for the outcomes. And then you have to have outcome based pricing. I mean, slightly tangential but related is that even Meta, they launched what is called personal agents earlier this month, I think. So right now, I think Mark Zuckerberg previewed it earlier this month, and so essentially, it's going to be a combination of it going to work on users' health, finances, relationship, everyday goals, and also chain all of these things together to provide solutions. And that, I mean, Mark has not posted on X for nearly 3 years right now, and this is the first post, and he posted. So essentially, the thinking is that he looks at it as it's a foundational to the next wave of products and revenue lines. Of course, agent chaining is critical to that, right? So yeah, I anticipate more of these things we will see, and it's also going to be blurring that we won't know where the agent is handing off and human is coming in and a agent again is handing off. So we'll see.
So over to you, Lucas. What's your take on this category, the agents and applications and interesting aspects happening here?
Well, for me, the agent category was a bit more, let's say, dormant than the other ones. But for me, the most interesting aspect is two things, namely that Apple is finally starting to open up its ecosystem and giving users the ability to build on top. Um, and I think last time we talked about them collaborating with Google and deciding on Gemini, which is the worst model right now. It's like, it's not even a conversation, right? It's like, if they just host the Chinese models, sorry, it's the better choice, right? Yet they have deep ties with Google through their search deals. And so, well, okay, at least the big 700-pound gorilla in the mobile market is moving. Okay, great. Now they're opening up AI to beta users. Okay, that's interesting. But to me, that is still like, even if we, when we talk about AI, don't think about Apple a lot, that's not only a billion people and devices. It is the trendsetter. If Apple puts functionality in front of people, people will see it. What we tend to forget is, I think, I, I don't know the statistic exactly at this point, but it was something around of only 2% worldwide of humanity has paid for AI.
Mhm.
It was, don't quote me on it. It doesn't matter whether it's 1 or 4%, but it was in, let's say, in striking distance of that number. We're very early. For us, it feels like we have been in this cycle for 4 years, and it's like 3 times up and down, and it's like crazy. And we're like very, let's say, AI pilled. Yet for essentially 99% of humanity, it's not a big deal. Maybe it's a big deal in what they hear on the news. It's not a big deal for them in their everyday life. And that would change as soon as AI makes real commitment, if Apple makes real commitment of rolling out functionality. So that is a big deal. And as I understand it, Siri AI, which is now the rebrand of Siri,
Mhm.
will have some capabilities that I will call agentic. It's not that I can tell Siri, hey, go through all my emails and like OpenClaw that has access to my Gmail, but it's getting there slowly, right? So that I care about. And the other thing is the company that probably understands this the best or is most bullish on moving in that space is Meta. And Meta said that they are dedicating efforts to and create an agent that works continuously for the user. So essentially, I'm using OpenClaw not as it needs to be OpenClaw. I'm using it as a category defining idea. What would OpenClaw look like if you don't see the agent, if you're just interacting with your social graph, if you're
Mhm.
connected to your memes, to your WhatsApp, to your Instagram, to all these things, and these things just work underneath. And so on the surface, not that many news in a category. Underneath the surface, once Apple gets into the room, it gets real.
Right. Right. Yeah, I think a lot of we've covered a lot of news, a lot of categories. I know we want to end this today a little early. So, Lucas, what is that thing? If there is any other big news that you want to talk about in the month of July, or what you're looking uh, forward to?
I um I'm not trying to rage bait anybody. And it's a weird statement to start the conversation with, but there was a settlement between Anthropic and copyright holders. I think
Yes,
it was
yes,
roughly like $1.5 billion
yeah,
dollars because essentially
something.
they just stole books, which is just lovely. I don't have anything particular against Anthropic or in particular against Anthropic. It's just like, to me, there is more dissonance in how they behave and how they talk than other companies. Anyway, so, okay, they stole books. I mean, they're not the only ones. Now, what I found very interesting is people are very okay with a lot of those transgressions. But now there was this news, and I'm not sure if it hit your news feed, that they employed a company to buy books, physical books, right? Like, well, again, you don't see my books by me, but physical books, and to cut their spine. So it's
Mhm.
loose leaves in terms of like the all the pages, and then go through industrial scanners that can scan tens of thousands of pages per minute. Sorry, or per hour. Sorry, hour. But essentially to industrialize the scanning of books. Because if you pay for a book, you own it. So in front of the legal system, if you buy a book, you can cut its spine, you can put it through an industrialized scanner and then burn the stuff or dump it on, like, I don't know, like in a recycling facility or whatever, right? But what was interesting is, so this is legally totally okay, but it really created a bad backlash because there's something that rubs people the wrong way when a company buys books, potentially books where there's only like a few copies left in the world. And
Right.
of course, it's their legal right to destroy them. But how can that be the world that we ended with? Where in order to do the right
True.
thing, you have to burn books. And I don't want to take sides at this point, but I will say as much as normally history is not kind to the people who burn books. right?
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
and that I found was an interesting wrinkle of the intersection of the current state of law, the need of AI to ingest quality data, and weird incentives blending it all up into something that makes sense why we ended up here, but makes no sense whatsoever that we should ever have gotten there, right? So
So
that's maybe something I want to end up on, simply because it describes also a little bit the vertigo of that AI can induce when you're exposed to let's say the fire hose of information that AI provides, and the weirdness of the world that we're entering.
so basically the containment of the physical presence, so that you can now commoditize that intelligence that you have gained from that physical copies or whatever you built, or you have whatever you have retrieved from that, since you have. Yeah, I know that that case is going to be that, whatever that scenario, it's going to be interesting. I think I'll be closely watching too what's going to happen next. Over to you, Sesh. Any what is that? Anything else that you want to discuss in the month of July, or what do you want
Well,
to looking forward?
maybe I can leave it on a lighter note. I think we're all now used to this LinkedIn posts by. I mean, I know this guy. Really, did you write it? Kind of mode, right? And then there's also this virtue signaling where people want to record themselves giving for charity and creating videos around it and all those things. So, in some sense, LinkedIn has become like a Facebook or Instagram in some scenarios, right? So, what I found much needed and interesting was LinkedIn has introduced what is called like seems like AI slop button, reporting button, so you can signal that this whole thing is being kind of generated by AI and all those kind of things. So, and in fact, in LinkedIn has gone to the extent of um, blocking several automated comments, as well as you could write a post in LinkedIn and then you can say you can click help AI to improve it. They're blocking that as well, so
Mhm.
that they're reducing some of this AI content into their LinkedIn posts. So the feeds are more authentic, more professional, and it also signals the time spent instead of machine generated motivational kind of garbage kind of thing that keeps coming up, right? So I felt that was a good development, because it was a little bit of an overdose of posting by several people who have just generated content with AI with very little meaning, right? So on a lighter note, I just wanted to say that
No,
it's
it's
a
very well said. I
strategic
think,
irony in this way.
yeah,
In some sense, it's a strategic irony in this day and age to say uh, I will introduce a human in the loop and say AI slop should be flagged. But sometimes it's also interesting to see authentic posts instead of AI generated content. So I thought it's an interesting twist to what we're discussing.
sure. I very well agree on what you're saying. Well, guys, I think we are almost at the top of the hour. Glad, I think we had this nice conversation and great chatting with both of you. Looking forward for next month again.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks, Lucas. Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you so much.